"Sir, step back." The voice of Anya Petrova sliced through the Arlington National Cemetery silence like surgical steel. A biker, Jack's rider, his worn leather jacket emblazoned with a lone wolf, froze with one boot hovering over the sacred line, a defiant smirk plastered on his face. He looked the female tomb guard up and down. "Relax, sweetheart," he sneered, the words dripping with condescension. Tourists gasped, phones lowered, and the very air seemed to hold its breath. But what they didn't know was this confrontation would ignite a nationwide conversation about honor. Before I tell you exactly how she silenced him with a single, powerful sentence, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment telling us where you're watching from. Now, let's get into it. The story unfolds on a blistering summer afternoon, where the weight of history hangs heavy in the humid air. The sun was a merciless hammer, beating down upon the endless, rolling hills of Arlington. Thousands of white headstones stood in silent, perfect formation, each a stark white exclamation point marking a story of ultimate sacrifice. The air was thick, a soupy blend of Virginia heat, cut grass, and a profound reverence that seemed to seep from the very soil. It was a place where whispers felt like shouts, and every footstep carried the echo of history. At the tomb of the unknown soldier, a crowd had gathered, a mosaic of American life. Families huddled under the shade of sparse trees. Veterans with faces like ancient maps stood with quiet dignity, and tourists from every corner of the globe clutched cameras, their expressions a mixture of awe and solemnity. At the center of this sacred stage was Sentinel Anya Petrova, 30 years old, with golden hair pulled back into a bun so tight it seemed forged from metal. She moved with a precision that was more than discipline. It was devotion. Her uniform was a study in perfection, crisp, dark, and immaculate. Her white gloves were spotless. Her gaze, fixed forward from under the brim of her cap, was as cold and clear as a glacier. Her movements were a sacred rhythm. 21 steps down the black mat, a sharp pivot, a 21-second pause, another turn, and 21 steps back. To Anya, this wasn't a job. It was a vow. With every perfectly executed step, every click of her heels on the stone, she was a living barrier between the chaos of the world and the sanctity of the nameless fallen. She was their guardian, their memory keeper, their unblinking shield. Scattered amongst the observers were the unwitting cast of the day's drama. Chloe Lenz Davis, a vibrant young YouTuber, was live streaming, her voice a hushed, respectful murmur into her microphone. "You can feel it, can't you, Lenz fam? It's not just a monument. It's a promise," she whispered, panning her phone across the crowd. Her camera briefly caught Eleanor Vance, 75, a former Air Force radio operator, sitting peacefully in her wheelchair. Her grandson stood behind her, his hand resting on her shoulder. Eleanor's eyes were distant, lost in a sea of memories stirred by the hallowed ground. Not far away, Marcus Thorne, a 70-year-old Marine veteran, stood ramrod straight, his VFW cap casting a shadow over his stern face. He wasn't watching as a tourist. He was observing as a brother in arms, his presence a silent salute. Nearby, 10-year-old Leo Martinez tugged on his mother's sleeve. "Mom," he whispered, "why does her face never change?" His mother knelt beside him, her voice soft. "Because she's protecting something very, very important, sweetie." Then, the sacred silence was torn apart. A low rumble grew into an obnoxious, guttural roar, a sound as out of place as a scream in a library. Heads turned in unison, brows furrowed in annoyance. Jack's rider arrived on a customized Harley, its chrome glinting aggressively under the sun. He steered the bike far too close to the plaza, killing the engine with a final defiant cough. He swung a leg over, his heavy, scuffed boots hitting the pavement with a thud. His leather jacket was worn and cracked, a stylized wolf snarling on the back. A thick silver ring adorned one finger. He moved with a swaggering arrogance, a man who saw the world as his personal playground, completely oblivious to the signs demanding silence and respect. He was a storm cloud of disrespect, rolling inexorably toward a sacred flame. Jax sauntered toward the tomb, his eyes scanning the scene not with reverence, but with the predatory gaze of someone looking for an angle, a shot, a way to make the moment about him. The crowd instinctively parted, creating a path for his toxic energy. He saw the simple, elegant velvet ropes separating the public viewing area from the Sentinel's marble walkway. To him, they weren't a boundary of respect, they were a challenge. With a smirk, he unclipped one of the ropes, letting it fall to the ground with a soft thud that sounded like a gunshot in the stillness. He stepped onto the gleaming white marble, the space reserved for the tomb guards alone. The scuff of his dirty boots on the pristine surface was a physical insult. He pulled out his phone and immediately began to stage a series of selfies. He pointed at the tomb with a thumbs up. He leaned back against an imaginary wall, striking a pose like a rock star. He was treating this hallowed ground, this final resting place for America's unidentified heroes, as nothing more than a quirky backdrop for his social media profile. The crowd's reaction shifted from passive annoyance to active anger. Low murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Eleanor Vance's breath caught in her throat, her frail hands gripping the arms of her wheelchair until her knuckles turned white. Marcus Thorne's jaw clenched so hard a muscle pulsed in his cheek. He took a half step forward before checking himself, his training battling with his fury. Chloe, ever the documentarian, kept her camera rolling, zooming in on Jax's violation. Her voice was now a tense whisper, crackling with disbelief and indignation. Okay, Lens fam, you're not going to believe this. This guy just crossed the line. Literally. This is the ultimate sign of disrespect. Let's see what the Sentinel does. She knew this was no longer a routine video about history. It was now a live-fire exercise in honor. Anya Petrova, midway through her 21-step count, did not break stride. Her rhythm remained flawless, but her senses, honed by hundreds of hours of this ritual, sharpened to a razor's edge. She was aware of every shift in the atmosphere, every rustle, every gasp. She had trained for this moment, not for a fight, but for the duty to correct, to protect, to uphold the dignity of the unknowns. At the precise end of the mat, she executed her turn. Her rifle snapped to her shoulder, the movement so crisp it seemed to create its own sound wave. She paused, her body now facing Jax directly. Her voice, when it came, was not loud, but it carried an authority that cut through the humid air and seized every person's attention. Sir, step back. This is sacred ground. The words landed with the force of a physical blow. The crowd fell utterly silent. Jax, however, just lowered his phone slightly and chuckled a low, grating sound. He pushed his sunglasses up on his nose, his smirk widening into a sneer. Relax, sweetheart, he said, his voice dripping with a casual, sexist poison. Just getting a picture. It's not like anyone in there can hear me. That single word, sweetheart, was the spark. It transformed his act from mere ignorance into a direct, personal, and gender challenge. He wasn't just disrespecting the dead. He was disrespecting the woman who stood guard over them. A wave of collective shock and disgust washed over the crowd. The confrontation had just become deeply, irrevocably personal. Before the crowd's outrage could find a voice, a new sound emerged. It was soft, trembling, yet it carried the undeniable strength of lived pain. Eleanor Vance leaned forward in her wheelchair, her gaze fixed on Jax. Young man, she began, her voice cracking with emotion but firm with conviction. My brother's plane went down over Korea in 1951. We never even got his dog tags back. Her eyes glistened with tears that had been held back for 70 years. For my family, that tomb is his grave. It's all we have. You will not mock it. Her personal testimony hung in the air, a raw and powerful testament to the tomb's true meaning. It wasn't just stone and marble. It was a home for the lost, a final solace for grieving families. Jax's smirk faltered for the first time, a flicker of uncertainty crossing his face. He was given no time to recover. Marcus Thorne stepped forward, moving with the quiet, deliberate menace of a retired Marine. The sun glinted off the eagle, globe, and anchor on his VFW cap. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. His presence alone was a weapon. "Son," he rumbled, his voice a low growl that vibrated with barely contained fury. "You're standing on ground paved for with the blood of men better than you'll ever be. You have 2 seconds to take your ignorance and walk away from here. Now." The command was absolute, leaving no room for argument. It was the voice of a man who had seen real conflict and had no patience for manufactured bravado. But the final, decisive blow came from the Sentinel herself. Anya Petrova performed a flawless port arms maneuver, the sound of her white-gloved hand slapping the rifle stock echoing like a judge's gavel. It was a declaration that the time for warnings was over. She took 3 deliberate, perfectly paced steps toward Jax, closing the distance until she stood just a few feet from him. She did not look angry. She looked absolute, an unmovable force. Her glacier blue eyes, no longer hidden by shadow, locked onto his. For the first time, Jax saw past the uniform and saw the warrior within. Her voice, when it came again, was different. It was no longer a command. It was a creed. It was the embodiment of her oath, carrying the weight of every unknown soldier she represented. "This tomb," she stated, each word a precisely carved block of granite, represents every American service member who gave their all and never came home. Their names are unknown, but their honor is eternal. You will not tarnish it here." She paused, letting the immense gravity of her words sink in before delivering the final, unassailable order. "Step back." It was over. Jax's entire facade of arrogance and defiance crumbled into dust. He was struck by the trifecta of emotional truth from Eleanor, raw authority from Marcus, and the unshakable, sacred duty embodied by Anya. He physically recoiled as if her words had been a physical force. The smirk was gone, replaced by a wide-eyed look of shock, which quickly melted into a deep, burning shame. He fumbled with his phone, shoving it into his pocket as if it were contaminated. Without another word, he turned, stumbled back behind the velvet rope, his head bowed. He muttered a single, choked phrase to the ground, audible only to those closest to him. "I'm sorry." Anya Petrova did not acknowledge his apology. She did not even glance at him as he retreated. His regret was irrelevant to her duty. Her mission was to the unknowns, not to the education of the ignorant. With the same mechanical precision as before, she pivoted on her heel, snapped her rifle back to her shoulder, and resumed her solitary, rhythmic march. To her, the interruption was over. The sanctity of the tomb was secured. Her watch continued. But for everyone else on the plaza, the world had shifted. An electric silence hung in the air for a moment, thick with unspoken emotion. Then, a single sound broke the stillness. Marcus Thorne began to clap. It wasn't the cheerful applause of a performance. It was a slow, deliberate, powerful clap, a rhythm of respect, a beat of profound gratitude. Then Eleanor, her hands trembling, joined in. Leo, seeing the adults, began clapping his small hands enthusiastically. Within seconds, the entire crowd, hundreds of strangers from every walk of life from different states and different countries, erupted in a wave of thunderous applause. It washed over the plaza, a reverent, heartfelt ovation not for a spectacle, but for a stand. It was a thank you to Anya, to the veterans, to the very idea of honor itself. Chloe had captured every second. Her hand was shaking slightly, but her camera work was steady. Through her own tears, she turned the phone to face her, her voice thick with emotion. "Lynn's fam, that is what honor looks like. That is why this place matters." She ended the live stream and immediately began editing the raw footage into a powerful, concise video. She titled it, "Female Tomb Guard Puts Disrespectful Biker in His Place," and added a single, potent hashtag, #Honor Her Stand. She hit upload. The internet did the rest. The video didn't just go viral, it detonated. Within hours, it had millions of views on YouTube, TikTok, and Twitter. #Honor Her Stand became the #1 trending topic in the country. The comment sections were a flood of emotion and pride. Watching from Texas, and I'm in tears. God bless that Sentinel. My grandfather served in Vietnam. Thank you for this. Hashtag honor her stand is what America should be about. Mainstream news outlets picked up the story, and Anya Petrova, the anonymous guardian, became an unwitting national symbol of integrity. The ripple effect was tangible. Inspired by the video, Leo Martinez convinced his teacher to start a school-wide project, writing letters of thanks to the Sentinels of the Tomb. In his own letter, he wrote, "You are a real-life superhero." Jax Ryder, facing a tidal wave of online condemnation, posted a raw, shaky video of his own. "I was wrong," he said, his voice stripped of all its earlier arrogance. "I was ignorant and disrespectful. There's no excuse. I'm learning now what that tomb really means. I'm sorry." He ended his video by saying, "I will work to honor her stand." The movement had found its voice, and it was resounding across the nation. This story began with one man's selfish disrespect, but was transformed by one woman's unwavering resolve. It serves as a powerful reminder that honor isn't an abstract concept or a dusty word in a history book. It is a living, breathing vow, a sacred flame defended not by monuments of stone, but by the extraordinary courage of ordinary people like Anya Petrova, who stand their ground when it matters most. Have you ever witnessed someone stand up for what's right when everyone else remained silent? What would you have done if you were standing in that crowd, watching it all unfold? And more importantly, in a world that often seems to value noise over substance, how do we teach the next generation about the profound meaning of sacrifice and honor? We genuinely want to hear your thoughts in the comments below. If this story renewed your faith in integrity and the power of standing for something greater than yourself, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about everyday heroes who changed the world in unexpected ways. Share this with someone you know who embodies strength, respects our history, and isn't afraid to do the right thing. We read every single comment. More stories about courage and conviction are waiting for you on your screen right now. Click on one of those to watch next. And we'll see you tomorrow with an incredible story about a teacher who made an unbelievable choice to protect her students.